The history of the M1 Garand began long before the battlefields of World War II, in a modest workshop in Springfield Armory, Massachusetts. John Cantius Garand, a French-Canadian by birth, began working on a semi-automatic rifle project in the 1920s after the First World War showed the catastrophic unpreparedness of the American Army. In 1932, his invention was adopted, albeit with a significant modification. General Douglas MacArthur personally insisted on maintaining the caliber .30-06 instead of the original 1.276, which forced Garand to redesign the magazine from 10 rounds to 8. This decision would later become the subject of countless discussions. 2 lost cartridges could mean the difference between life and death at a critical moment in the battle. By 1936, the M1 Garand was officially adopted by the American Army. The United States became the only country in the world whose standard infantry rifle was semi-automatic. While other nations still relied on bolt systems that required manual reloading after each shot, American soldiers were able to fire at a rate of 40 to 50 rounds per minute at a distance of up to 300 meters. Chapter 2. Trial by Fire. The M1 Garand received its first baptism of fire in the Philippines in December 1941. General MacArthur, the same man who had insisted on changing the caliber 4 years earlier, was now enthusiastically reporting to Washington on the rifle's excellent fighting qualities. The Japanese soldiers, faced with American weapons, were amazed. They called it a machine pistol, not believing that every ordinary American could be armed with a weapon with such a rate of fire. But the true significance of the M1 Garand was revealed in Europe. By 1944, more than 5.4 million rifles had been produced. The Springfield Armory and the Winchester Repeating Arms Company were operating around the clock. Each branch of the U.S. Armed Forces received its share: the Army, the Marines, the Navy. And every soldier who held this 4.3-kilogram rifle in his hands knew that he had an advantage. Chapter 3. A Look from the Other Side. Captain Friedrich Müller, company commander of the 352nd Infantry Division, first encountered the M1 Garand on Omaha Beach. That morning on June 6, 1944, was supposed to be a triumph for the German defense. The fortifications were perfect, the fields of fire were calculated to a meter, and the MG-42 machine guns were ready for operation. But when the first waves of Americans reached the shore and began to move inland, Müller heard this sound. Not individual shots, not machine gun bursts, but continuous, methodical fire that never stopped. His soldiers, armed with excellent carabiner 98K rifles, had to open the bolt, remove the cartridge case, insert a new cartridge, close the bolt, and only then aim again. The Americans just pulled the trigger. Again, and again, and again. After the battle, when his thinned company retreated deep into French territory, Müller picked up the captured M1 Garand. The weapon was heavier than his carbine, but perfectly balanced. He loaded the 8-cartridge clip in block. A simple movement from top to bottom, and the rifle is ready for action. No separate cartridges, no detachable magazines that could be lost in the mud. Müller raised his rifle, aimed at a broken tree about 100 meters away, and started shooting. The recoil was gentle and manageable. He did not lose sight of the target between shots. In 15 seconds, he emptied the entire clip, 8 rounds, which with his Mauser would have taken at least twice as long. When the last round was fired, the empty clip flew out of the receiver with a distinctive metallic ping. Müller heard one of his soldiers chuckle. That's their weak spot. When you hear that sound, you know they're out of bullets. But the captain shook his head. In battle, with machine guns, grenades, the screams of the wounded, you won't hear that sound even if you're standing 2 meters away. And even if you do, there will be 10 more with full clips next to this American. Chapter 4. Excellence and Adaptation. By the end of 1944, the German command was well aware of the scale of the problem. Every analytical report from the front confirmed the same thing. In direct fire contact, the American infantry group had a significant advantage over the German one, despite the fact that the Wehrmacht had more machine guns and MP-40 submachine guns. It was about math. An American infantry squad of 12 men could fire about 96 rounds of rifle ammunition in a minute of continuous combat, plus fire from a Browning automatic rifle bar. A German squad of the same size, with its bolt-action Mauser guns, could fire about 120 to 180 rounds from rifles, but only with exceptional training and experience, and then with reload breaks that made soldiers vulnerable. Oberst Hans von Luke, who commanded a panzer division in Normandy, later recalled in his memoirs, "We quickly realized that we could not afford to engage in protracted firefights with the American infantry. Their squad-level firepower was superior to ours. We had to rely on machine guns, artillery, and our superior tactical skills." The Wehrmacht adapted. The density of machine guns in German infantry units increased. More soldiers received MP-40 assault rifles. By the end of the war, the revolutionary STG-44 appeared, the first assault rifle in the world capable of both semi-automatic and automatic fire. But these measures came too late and in insufficient quantity. About 425,000 units of the STG-44 were produced, compared to 5.4 million M1 Garands by the end of the war. Chapter 5. Into the Depths of Germany. In the winter of 1944 to 1945, non-commissioned Officer Weber, whom we met at the beginning of this story, found himself surrounded in the Ardennes during the last major German offensive. His company was cut off after the American troops restored the front line. In a desperate attempt to break through to their own, Weber and his comrades made their way through the snow-covered forest. Their Mauser ammunition was running low. One of the soldiers picked up a captured M1 Garand from the body of a fallen American. Weber didn't stop him. At that moment, any weapon was a blessing. "How is she?" asked Weber at the campsite. "It's hard," the soldier admitted. "But, oh my God, how she shoots. I don't need to think about the shutter, about recharging. Just aim and shoot. Aim and shoot." Weber nodded. He himself has held the Garand in his hands several times in recent months. There were also negative aspects. The caliber. The 30-06 was not compatible with German ammunition, making captured rifles useless without captured cartridges. The in-block system was unfamiliar to German soldiers who were used to conventional clip charging. The weight of the rifle, 4.3 kilograms versus 3.9 kilograms for Mauser, was felt after an hour-long march. But when the battle began, all these considerations disappeared. There is only one truth left. A soldier with an M1 Garand could fire twice as many targeted shots as a soldier with a bolt-action rifle, and still stay hidden without risking his head while reloading. Chapter 6. Patton's Voice. Lieutenant General George S. Patton has never been known for diplomacy or restraint. When in January 1945, in a letter to General Campbell, the Army's Chief of Supply, he wrote, "In my opinion, the M1 rifle is the greatest military weapon ever invented. This was not an exaggeration for the sake of a red word." Patton saw with his own eyes how his Third Army, armed with M1 Garand, cut a path through France, Belgium, and Germany. He saw how American soldiers, many of whom had been civilians 6 months ago, stood up to battle, hardened Wehrmacht veterans, and won. And although victory was ensured by many factors, superiority in the air, artillery, tanks, logistics, at the level of an individual soldier, in a trench, in the ruins of a French village or a German city, the rifle gave the advantage. Patton's phrase survived the war itself. She was quoted in textbooks, in documentaries, in museums. She became part of the M1 Garand legend, a legend that is not entirely accurate. No German general called it the rifle that won the war. This definition belonged to the Americans, and it reflected the American perspective. Chapter 7. The Reality of the Battlefield. The truth was more complicated and interesting than propaganda cliches. Yes, the M1 Garand provided a significant advantage, but the German soldiers and officers interviewed after the war gave different estimates. Some, especially experienced infantrymen, recognized the advantage in rate of fire, but noted that it was offset by German tactics based on the heavy use of MG-42 machine guns. This machine gun, with a rate of fire of 1,200 rounds per minute, created such a curtain of fire that the advantage of semi-automatic rifles became less significant. Others pointed out the disadvantages of the M1 Garand. The inability to partially load the rifle. It was necessary to remove the entire clip and insert a new one. The difficulty of silent charging. The clip was inserted with a loud click and relatively heavy weight. The 98K carbine was lighter, longer, which is important for bayonet fighting, and easier to maintain. Still others, and there were a majority of them, simply recognized the fact that the Americans came with the best weapons at the individual soldier level. This was not a reason for panic or awe. This was a factor that had to be considered in tactics. The commander of the tank division, interviewed about the characteristic ping sound, laughed. The sound of a discarded clip? In battle? Are you kidding? In battle, you hear nothing but explosions, machine gun fire, and screams. This is a myth that someone came up with after the war. Chapter 8. Legacy. By the time Germany surrendered in May 1945, the M1 Garand had proven its worth in all theaters of war. From the frozen forests of the Ardennes to the hot sand of North Africa, from the mud of the Italian mountains to the dense jungles of the Pacific Ocean, the rifle worked. Not perfect, not without problems, but it worked.